Look, Cooper Kupp, we know his fantasy stock is through the roof. He's not exactly the picture of health, though, Tom. Demarcus Robinson, who finished last year great. And how about the prodigal son, Tyler Johnson, draft Twitter's favorite guy who fell to the 5th round. He's been around the block a couple times, drafted by Tampa. He comes out and kind of plays the Puka Nacua role on Sunday night against the Lions. So if you need a fill-in maybe for a month, Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson got some snaps for the Rams.
Yeah, and I think you can even take that to the tight end position. And maybe if you're looking for a little bit help there, that was a tough spot. Colby Parkinson, a guy that we've both been touting all offseason long, Joe, has looked good in his first appearance with the Rams, and he's going to be heavily involved in this passing game. So if you want to extend it out there, I would include him in the mix as well. But I think I'd still prioritize Demarcus Robinson. He's been on a pretty strong run dating back to all of December and into the playoffs last year. He's not gonna crush it for you, but I think he's good for a good 10 fantasy points per week, and maybe has a little bit of touchdown upside. Got a target last night in the end zone as well. So they gave him a nice chunk of money in the offseason, $4 million guaranteed. So they like what he has done for them.
What? Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.
Week 1 of the 2024 NFL season is in the books, Tom Brawley, and I got to be honest, this is about as thin a Week 1 waiver wire as I have seen. Oftentimes we have a random running back blowing up here or a receiver blowing up there who weren't drafted in leagues, and we just really didn't see that in 2024 NFL Week 1, and I'm actually going to throw out a reason for that. Because nobody blew up in 2024 NFL Week 1. The worst Week 1 in terms of average passing yards in the NFL since the year 2000. So really, it was bad offense across the board. It was especially bad quarterback play, Tom, across the board, and a lot of the big name quarterbacks who you drafted maybe in the first like 8 rounds of your draft, or the guys who you drafted to be a solid starter, did not come through for you, and in turn a lot of receivers didn't come through for you. So we're gonna have to navigate that and try not to overreact, while also giving out some of the recommendations here on the waiver wire. And T-Bro, I want to start with one of those quarterbacks who actually did play well and is available on a high volume of fantasy leagues. That is Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay
Buccaneers. He took advantage of a nice matchup against the Commanders in the season opener, and he really delivered. 289 yards, 4 passing touchdowns. And this is on the heels of a really strong performance last year, when he reset his career bests in passing yards and passing touchdowns. So he's stacking together good performances, and this is what happened at the end of last year. They won a playoff game and reached the divisional round. So this doesn't feel like a fluke now. So has a pretty easy schedule, relatively for passing game wise, against Detroit coming up here. Denver, Philadelphia, and then Atlanta. So nothing too taxing over the next couple of weeks. And of course, he has Mike Evans playing at an extremely high level still. Chris Godwin back in the slot, making plays for him. And Jaylen McMillan, a rookie wide receiver who gives them a real threat at wide receiver behind those guys. So everything is kind of adding up here to that Baker Mayfield, kind of a forgotten man in fantasy drafts. He doesn't really add the element of running, but he's trending up here after a strong first week performance against the Washington Commanders.
Let's go to another guy who's had a strong Week 1 performance at a position where there were no strong performances. I'm talking about the tight end position. And fluke, maybe not. Mark Andrews got into a car accident a few weeks ago. Isaiah Likely, the Baltimore Ravens were talking him up in the offseason, and hey, John Harbaugh, he's got some downfield juice with Lamar. Well, the Ravens had no downfield juice because they couldn't protect Lamar Jackson last week, but Isaiah Likely comes out, has over 100 yards, and are we looking at a pre-incident Gronk Hernandez situation here where the Ravens have two playable tight ends?
I think that's where we're heading right now. I think Mark Andrews is going to have better days ahead. The offensive line really broke down in front of Lamar Jackson against that Chris Jones and that Kansas City Chiefs defensive line. So he couldn't really throw it much downfield. And our fantasy points data shows that Mark Andrews was getting open according to our ASS and average separation score, and Lamar just didn't have opportunities to really push the ball downfield. But Isaiah Likely was on the field running some of those shorter routes, and he took advantage of it, and he scored that one receiving touchdown. Basically had no chance of scoring on it, and he slipped the tackle and made a really strong run up the sideline. So I don't think the Ravens want to put that back in the bottle after seeing what he can do. And his routes were right around 61%. Mark Andrews was right around 71%. So both of these guys were very active. And dating back to the preseason here, Isaiah Likely was a guy that was underdrafted a little bit, but now I think he's got to be considered in that like low end tight end 1 range. And Mark Andrews was a guy that was being drafted like tight end 5. And now he probably has to be considered in that low end tight end 1 range as well. So I think both of these guys are going to be relevant, and they didn't really make any big moves at the wide receiver position this offseason. So both of these guys are going to stay heavily involved moving forward.
I want to remind everybody that the waiver wire document up at fantasypoints.com is a living, breathing article that is updated multiple times throughout the week by Tom Brawley and John Hansen. That is a paywalled article behind any of our NFL packages, but you can use code YouTube25 to get 25% off. It is not too late to subscribe to fantasypoints.com and help you navigate the difficult waters of the waivers. Now, Tom, before we get to some injury news, let's go to one guy at the running back position on a team where we knew there was going to be opportunity. It was just a matter of who was going to seize that opportunity. And in week 1 for the LA Chargers, it looks like that was J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah. Hey, he's always looked good whenever he's been healthy and on the field. And he proved it again in week 1 of 2024. Lost basically his entire season last year to a torn Achilles. And this was his second devastating leg injury of his career. But, everything checked out here in the season opener. Now just needs to get a little bit more work here. Gus Edwards, they were splitting the workload, but I think J.K. Dobbins is going to, start taking a little bit more work away. He'll own these passing down situations. I would expect Gus Edwards to get the goal line work moving forward, but he should carve out a pretty nice role. Hopefully he can stay healthy. He owns a career average of 5.8 yards per carry in 2020 through 2023 with close to a 57% success rate. So, and he's continuing that great running here in a new look Los Angeles Chargers offense, but one that he's very familiar with as well under Greg Roman. And, that was who he was running with to begin his career. So very familiar with the system. And we saw right in week 1 here, this is a team that wants to be run heavy. Justin Herbert threw only 26 passes. He previously had, only 3 times in his 62 complete starts had finished under 30 attempts. So this is a new look offense here. They want to run the ball, and J.K. Dobbins is looking like the guy that should be doing it the most often in that backfield.
Tom, before we get to the 2 significant injuries, actually 3, but it really just affects 2 positions for fantasy. I want to ask you, especially after a week like this, week 1, where scoring was so bad across the league, how much more difficult is it to maybe drop that underachieving sleeper on your bench? It's really not easy to do when so many players underachieved. Are you more willing to kind of just sit on it for another week at this stage?
Yeah, I'm usually a little slower than most people. I usually like to give these guys. I like to see a little bit larger sample size, and especially now that, I mean, across the board, around the league here, it was tough sledding for a lot of people, and already getting the questions about Evan Ingram. Should I bench these guys? And the tight end position was really rough across the board. So I would give most of my guys another chance here. But like you said, there's a couple injury situations that we're monitoring this week that need some attention.
So let's start with Thursday night football, because this is something that people are going to need to monitor. We're recording this just after Monday practice reports came out. Both Dolphin running backs, Devon Achane with an ankle injury and Raheem Mostert with a chest injury, did not practice. Could be precautionary. The Dolphins never announced that they left the game with injuries, but it is just something to monitor. And it is worth noting, Tom, that rookie running back Jaylen Wright was a healthy scratch in week 1. So my guess is, if the Dolphins are missing one or both of those guys in week 2 and you just need somebody to fill in for 1 week, Jeff Wilson is probably the better bet, while the long-term bet would be on Jaylen Wright.
Yeah, Jaylen Wright is the guy I want to own, in future weeks. But if I'm looking for a 1 week play and I counted on Devon Achane or Raheem Mostert this week, I think I would pivot to Jeff Wilson. Especially, this is a divisional game against the Bills. It's a pretty pivotal game. They didn't have the rookie even out on the field in his first game that he could have possibly done it. So I don't know if they want to put that much pressure on Jaylen Wright, but who knows? Maybe they'll have to do it anyway if both Achane and Mostert are out of the mix. But hopefully that's just precautionary stuff. We'll get more information here on Tuesday and Wednesday night. But not a great first sign here. Although a lot of times these Monday practices, it's not even practices. They're just anticipating what could be ahead here the rest of the week.
One fantasy player, important fantasy player who we know will have an extended absence, is Puka Nacua. The Rams placing him on IR with a PCL sprain. He does not need surgery, so there's probably some optimism he's going to miss the minimum 4 games. But look, Cooper Kupp, we know his fantasy stock is through the roof. He's not exactly the picture of health, though, Tom. Demarcus Robinson, who finished last year great. And how about the prodigal son, Tyler Johnson, draft Twitter's favorite guy, who fell to the 5th round. He's been around the block a couple times, drafted by Tampa. He comes out and kind of plays the Puka Nacua role on Sunday night against the Lions. So if you need a fill-in maybe for a month, Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson got some snaps for the Rams.
Yeah, and I think you can even take that to the tight end position. And maybe if you're looking for a little bit help there, that was a tough spot. Colby Parkinson, a guy that we've both been touting all offseason long, Joe, has looked good in his first appearance with the Rams, and he's going to be heavily involved in this passing game. So if you want to extend it out there, I would include him in the mix as well. But I think I'd still prioritize Demarcus Robinson. He's been on a pretty strong run dating back to all of December and into the playoffs last year. He's not gonna crush it for you, but I think he's good for a good 10 fantasy points per week, and maybe has a little bit of touchdown upside. Got a target last night in the end zone as well. So they gave him a nice chunk of money in the offseason, $4 million guaranteed. So they like what he has done for them. But obviously Tyler Johnson, maybe he is turning a corner here. He made the big catch and spin and run for a huge gain in that game. So he's a guy that's also on the rise.
Thanks for checking in with the Fantasy Points YouTube channel. Make sure you like this video. Click on that subscribe button for more fantasy football updates. Go attack those waivers in week 1. Don't spend too much fab, though. We'll see everybody next week.